Alright, so I'm going to start sewing a little Victorian bag. It's a handbag. Comes with a piece of silk or satin and a piece of suede, a piece of batting, and 2 circles already cut for you. And the first step to this kit is to take this batting and attach the silk to it. So I'm just going to stick it on the batting, put a couple pins in it, and sew it on my great little machine here. This is a Singer 28. It's a 3/4 machine. It's hand crank. It's from 1918. So those pins are just going to hold it in place, and I'm just going to stitch close to the edge. All the way around. So there it is. Now all I have to do is trim around the circle. And I'm going to set that aside. Now I take my rectangle piece and I'm going to put it right sides together, and I'm going to sew the short end, and it's going to form a cylinder. Now this doesn't have a reverse, so if you want to lock that stitch you have to turn it around. Take a couple more stitches. And the same at the end, you turn it around, and that locks the stitch. This is the tension release, so I can pull it away from the machine. I'm going to place this right sides together with my circle, and I'm going to pin it all the way around. And I'm going to start with opposite ends, so I'm just going to pull this so that I have the other end in my hand, and I'll pin it across the opposite side of the circle. And now I'm going to ease in the rest of this. And then it gets stitched. And you pull the needles out, the pins out as you go. I want to lock that. This is how they made everything back in 1918. It's definitely a slower process when you're hand cranking, but it's still kind of fun. Every one time around the crank, the needle goes up and down twice. Okay, so I've gone all the way around, and I just want to make sure that I caught the batting all the way around, and I did. So I'm just gonna, I went past my beginning spot a little bit. I'll pull that out. I'm a thread trimmer. That's what I do. It's an affliction I have. So I want to make sure that I caught my seam all the way around, and I did. So that's the beginning of the bag. Now I'm going to do the lining, which is really could be the outside of the bag too. It's reversible. So I'm going to do this the same way I did the silk part. So here I'm just going to sew these together. I keep looking for the foot pedal. It's a habit. And that's just to lock the stitch at the beginning. There, I made that fit perfectly. Now I'm just going to stitch all the way around it like I did on the satin or silk. So this is the lining. And before I put it in the bag, I have to put a couple of buttonholes on the bag. So I like to do one of them near the seam, and I use just a little bit of paper as a stabilizer, because that's what they used. They didn't have fusible interfacing, so it's just a piece of regular printer paper. So this is my Singer buttonhole attachment. It's pretty old. It'll fit most Singer machines. And it looks like this. And it comes with a plate that stops your feed dogs from grabbing the fabric. And the plate gets put on here, except that the screw that came with this plate does not particularly fit this machine. So because I can't use that plate, I'm going to insert a card over the feed dogs. So I just need to poke a little hole in the middle of the card. Any kind of card stock will work. And that's where my needle will pass through. Perfect. And then I'm going to just tape it into place. Good old Scotch tape. It's not going to harm the machine. And I'm going to pull that thread up through the card. And I'm going to take this foot off. And I'm going to place this on the machine. So this fork here gets put over the thumb nut that's on the needle bar. The nut that holds the needle in place. If that's not on the needle bar, then your attachment won't work. And then this gets attached to your needle bar. So make sure my fork is on there, and it is. And then I can screw this into place. Now, some of the newer attachments for buttonholes come with cams that you use for your different shape and size buttonholes. This one doesn't have any cams, it just has a bunch of adjustment screws on it. This one here, when you turn it, it puts you in the position you want to be on your buttonhole. So I want to be at the top end of my buttonhole here. This one tells me how long my buttonholes is going to be, and I've got it set sort of in the middle. It's right where I want it to be. The ones on the other side is how wide the bars on each side are and the space that's between the bars that you're going to cut. And that's already pre-adjusted too with 2 thumb screws here. So now what I'm going to do is test it out first on a scrap of fabric and make sure it works. And you can see that it moves the fabric back and forth. Instead of the needle zigzagging, the fabric zigzags. It works really well. There's my buttonhole. Now, to open up your buttonhole, you put your seam ripper in between the bars and then out again. And you just rip. And then you do it from the other side. Some people like to put a pin in so that they don't cut through, but I just go from both sides. So there it is. There's my buttonhole. That's what my cording's going to go through, and it seems to be a good size. So I'm going to start on the edge of the bag. So I'm going to just slip my bag in there. And I don't want to start on the very edge. I want to leave room for a seam, so I'm going to pull it towards me a bit. and make sure that I'm right where I need to be. And then I just start to stitch. And that's how that works. Kind of missed my mark, but it doesn't matter. It still was on the paper. So I just tear the paper off the back. And then I open up my buttonhole. See, when people want to put a pin in, they put it at the end of the buttonhole so that they can't go through the end. Like that. But I still like to get it from both sides just to make sure that I'm as big as I could make the hole. And there's my buttonhole. Now we can finish the bag. So to finish the bag, we're going to take the outside of the bag and turn it wrong side out. And then we're going to take the lining of the bag and we're going to put it inside. We're going to match up these seams. There was that one seam on the side. So we'll open up the seam and match it. And then we're going to pin this all the way around. And ease it to fit. So I've got it pinned all the way around the top. I'm going to leave an opening about this far so that I can turn the bag right side out when I'm done. So I'll start at one end of the opening and I'll make sure I stop when I get to the other pin that's crosswise. And this is my crosswise pin, so I'm going to stop here and back tack a bit. So now I turn it right side out through that hole that I left. Pretty. So when you get to that hole, after I've turned it right side out, I stuff the lining into the bag. Like that. And the lining is made to be a little bit taller than the bag itself, so it's going to stand out about that far all the way around. So I want to pin it like that to make sure that it's even all the way around. And where the hole was, I'm just going to make sure that the seam allowance and the suede are both pointing down towards the bottom of the bag. And when I top stitch this, it'll close up my hole for me. So there's the top edge of the bag. You can see that it's going to show blue. And I'm going to stitch right along as close to the fold as I can. And I think it's going to be easier if I turn it like this. Here we are back at the beginning. I'm just going to go over it a little bit and cut that. Pretty. So now what we have to do is make a casing. So my buttonhole is here and it's about this big. So I'm just going to stitch down this far to the bottom of the buttonhole all the way around the bag. So there it is, it's all done. So it's reversible. You could have it with the dark suede outside, the navy blue, or you could flip it around and have it so that the pretty print is on the outside. So now to put the cording in, you take your cording and you're going to cut it in half. This is 54 inches. You end up with two 27-inch pieces when you cut it in half. And then the other piece, you can use either a bodkin or a big safety pin. I'm going to feed it through a safety pin. Now I have the end of mine taped so it won't unravel on me. And I'm just going to feed it through and then back through again. And it's going to go into the hole and around the other side and back out again. And you're just going to inch it through. Push it and pull, push it and pull, all the way around. And you're going to come out the same hole. So I've come all the way through and out again. I'm just going to take off the pin. And these ends will fray and look like tassels. So you're going to want to tie them tight. Let's try an overhand knot. This is a lot thicker than I'm used to using, this cording. And that pulls tight. You could leave it with one or go around the other side, which is what I'm going to do. So now you start in the opposite hole, go all the way around, and come back out again. It's a cute little bag. I don't know what I'll use it for yet, but maybe I'll put some sewing tools in it.